You've all heard of Indigogo. He is the co-founder and chief business officer of Indigogo, and he'll be joining us with Canvas Ventures' very own Paul Shao. Give a warm welcome to Slava Rubin. Okay.
How's everyone doing? Yeah, you doing okay? You guys hanging in there for the last session before all the alcohol?
We're the last stop between happy hour.
Awesome. So, excited to have Slava here today. And just a quick word about myself. Paul Shao, Canvas Venture, three of us got together, raised $475 million. We focused a lot on marketplace investments. I was an immigrant myself back in '86, built a company back at Benchmark in the late '90s. And since then I've been on the dark side, so it's okay ride. Why don't we just start? So, Slava, immigrant story. When did you move here, and what was it like?
I was born in Belarus in '78, came over in '79, religious exile. We're Jews, and being a Jew in the former Soviet Union was not looked up upon. So we came over to Brooklyn, and before Brooklyn was cool. And lived there.
You weren't a hipster back then?
I mean, I was 6 months old. I don't know if I was a hipster yet. I don't know if I'm a hipster now either. So, but then we were there till I was 7 years old, and my mom got her residency. She's a doctor. We moved to Pennsylvania, and grew up my formative years in Pennsylvania until graduated college in Philadelphia. Lived in Belgium for a year, then Chicago for 3 years. Was a strategy consultant for 8, and then along the way decided to start Indigogo.
When did you move to the Bay Area, or where did you start Indigogo?
I started Indigogo with two co-founders, Eric and Danae. And they were based out of Haas. They were going to MBA school. So the story of Indigogo is I had a friend Eric, and we were consultants. He was on the technology side, and I was on the strategy side. My dad died of cancer when I was a kid, and for 10 years I couldn't talk about it. So then finally, 10 years later, as a New Year's resolution, which I always try to follow through on, I decided to try to raise money for charity for cancer research. I thought I was smart. I was consulting some of the largest companies, how to use the internet, how to use tech innovation. So I thought I could try to use the internet to try to raise some money. Keep in mind, this is 2005, and I was using PayPal, I was using MySpace, I was using email, and it was just terrible to try to raise money.
Yep.
And I spoke to Eric, and Eric went to go get his MBA at Haas because he was a tech guy. He was trying to get it round out his skill set. I then had never been to California actually yet.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
So you were talking to them remotely. Where were you?
No. I didn't even know Danae yet. But Eric and I were coworkers at the consulting firm. He went to go get his MBA, and he said, "Hey, it's pretty nice here, California. There's some nice girls. I was single." And he's like, "You should come over." So I flew over, and that weekend I met Danae, when he was at school, and a lot of MBA students, they try to come up with a company. And Danae had this idea, which was, she was an investment banker before Haas, and she said, I want to eliminate the gatekeeper. I want to be able to have people be able to invest in a mutual fund, and whoever invests in that mutual fund gets to vote on how that mutual fund will be invested. And Eric says, "What do you think of that idea?" I said, "Well, if you want to change the finance industry, you can't do it in the finance industry." And she's like, "You don't get it. I want to do a mutual fund." And I was like, "Okay, if you want to change the finance industry, you can't do it in the finance industry." So then she said the same thing again. Then I said the same thing again. And then she said, "I don't think he's very intelligent."
I'm just agreeing with you here.
Right. And then Eric says, "So Slava, what's up?" I'm like, "Well, keep in mind, this is now 2006. So put on your 2006. Like, the way I hear it, you're kind of thinking like YouTube." It's like, "What?" "YouTube's not owned by Google yet." I'm like, "Have you seen YouTube?" "No, I haven't seen YouTube." "Well, anybody can put up any content and people can watch it." It's like, "What's that have to do with money?" "Have you heard of Prosper?" I said, "No, I haven't heard of Prosper." Well, that was like peer-to-peer lending. That was the beginning of peer-to-peer lending. I was like, "I think you want like prostitute. A cross between like Prosper and YouTube." It's like, "I don't know what you're talking about. I want a mutual fund with people like..."
You mean the company that would get Prosper too?
Yeah, that was the first code name actually. So I showed her YouTube, and she said, "This is fascinating. who put up these videos? I said, anybody. Well, who watches these videos? Well, first they share it with whoever they know, and if people like it, they share it with other people. Well, how do these videos show up on the homepage and you are able to search for these? There's algorithms that decide. She's like, this is amazing. I'm like, yeah, you want this for money? She's like, that's exactly what I want. So we created Indigogo, and for all intents and purposes, created crowdfunding. January 2008, we launched.
Such a brilliant idea. I'm sure VCs were throwing money at you.
It's actually quite comical. We started just in the film industry, just the way Bezos started in the book industry. And it was rough. I mean, it was a market crash in 2008, and that happens to be when we launched our company. I had this brilliant plan, which is Q1, we actually had investors who wanted to give us money in 2007 before we launched because they started hearing about the idea. But I, because I'm brilliant, decided to reject that money and to try to get more leverage in the negotiations after I actually had a product out. So then in Q1 the plan was to launch it, Q2 the plan was to get case studies, and Q3 we were going to use those case studies to create media to then get hype for the VCs to want to invest in the hype. That all worked perfectly until this thing happened in the fall of 2008, which kind of ruined that plan completely. And so yeah, we actually ended up getting rejected by 93 VCs in a row. There was no yeses in that process, and it was pretty rough. So we only had enough money through 2008, and we ended up lasting through the middle of 2010 before anybody started saying yes to us. Those were some dark days from the previous panel. We almost closed up multiple times.
Talk about that journey a bit. 93 no's. It's humbling to just get 10 no's. What were you telling yourself?
The truth is, if I started
why am I still pitching this?
If I had a new company today and I got 93 no's in a row, I'm quite confident I would not move on. I probably would stop a lot earlier.
Yeah.
But we were supremely passionate. We really felt like there was a need in the world, and the people to solve that need was us. And if we weren't going to solve that, no one was going to solve that, and the world needed us to do that. And because we had that passion, when VCs said no, we were like, they just don't understand, and it's too early for them. Which the reality is they did just not understand. Like they would say, wait, they're going to give you money and you're not going to give them stock in return? No, they're going to get like t-shirts where you know there's going to be fraud like right away. The first people going to eat. Like no one believed in crowdfunding. The word crowdfunding didn't even exist back then. And I actually think that entrepreneurs, what we really get paid for, and paid as a metaphor, is really the decision of do you move forward or do you stop?
Yeah.
Everything else is kind of like functionality or like a feature or some sort of capability that you can hire or somebody else does. But to have that in your gut to decide should I move forward or not in a world that doesn't have clear data. See, when your company is huge and you can look at some dashboards like, oh, up 10%, down 11%, you start getting logical and analytical about it. When everything is gray and you're trying to create reality out of moving pieces, it's very difficult. So I like to simplify it down. And I was, the three founders were the eyes, the hands, and the heart. So Danae was the heart, she did more of the customer service, the back office, the accounting, the legal, the compliance. Eric was the hands, he designed, developed, engineered everything. And I was the eyes, I looked forward, I did fundraising, marketing, strategy. And they kind of relied on me to look forward. And I just simplified it down, is the wind behind my back and supporting my sails, or was I running into the wind? And it was just that simple. And I just honestly always felt that the wind was behind us. Digital trends were moving in the right direction, people using fintech, people getting used to spending money, the idea of crowd, all these things were evolving. We were just riding all those waves. And it just felt like we were onto something. We might not succeed, but we were still onto something. And obviously that becomes reality, and eventually, after you get enough no's, you start to have to believe that there's probably not going to be a hero tomorrow that's going to say yes. So we kind of have to figure out how to be sustainable ourselves, because we ran out of all of our startup capital ourselves. So then we actually became profitable. The beauty of crowdfunding is you have an automatic business model, and you just take a piece of the money. So we made money on day one, it just wasn't a lot of money. So then we just had to figure out how to make more money than we spend and start being able to live off of that money. And before you know it, the numbers start going up a little bit, we're profitable, then the next VC Whether they want to have their opinions or not, you can't argue with them. The numbers are the numbers. So we went from getting rejected by 93 VCs in a row to getting 5x oversubscribed on our seed round in a matter of 4 weeks. Literally like that. As soon as somebody finally said yes, the data was looking good, we went massively oversubscribed, and then we started raising a lot of money.
I resonate with 3 things you said. One is, we often see with entrepreneurs who just stick in there, they just sort of believe that if I don't do it, no one else will do it. There's just so much truth to that particular mentality and sort of that conviction and passion that you put into it. I remember when we were raising capital, this was in '98, right before the first crash, and we call it like a walk fashion exercise. You talk to the VC, pitch, they sort of come back and say, bring in a rock, and say, oh, I want it, and you bring in a rock, and like, hey, no, I want a wrong rock, so you go back and roll, you bring the wrong rock back, and then I want a blue wrong rock, and then that went on for the whole summer until, like you, one term she showed up, and then 6 terms she showed up, all at once. So with that, when you get 93 no's, there's just always a lot of feedback. What's the advice that you would share with the audience what input, knowing what you know now, what input do you incorporate and what input do you not incorporate? How do you, the rejection happens all the time.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of rejection is their problem, not your problem. They're not in the space, you ask the wrong VC, if they're interested, they don't know anything about marketplaces. These are their problems, they're just using you for research. But you got to decide as to whether or not you trust these people or whether or not you respect them. If you actually respect them, that's already a major filter, then you should just listen to what they say to pull that into your inputs. It's kind of like a stream, kind of like a river, you take all the streams of information. Some of the most valuable information will come from your customers. Hopefully you have customers. If you don't have customers yet, then you have some sort of other approach to figure out feedback. Then you have your coworkers, your co-founders, and other folks. VCs, that are good have, decent information, but they're also working off of very limited knowledge of your business. So you need to know how to filter it and not just get too excited or too upset about what they have to say. They're just regular people as well.
What advice do you have in terms of getting in front of VCs, right, for those that are raising capital soon? What's the advice you would give them?
My advice, whether this is consistent with others, but my advice is, 1,
get your customers money. That's really good advice, probably.
Well, 1 is don't take meetings with anybody except for a partner. That's number 1.
Good advice.
Number 2 is...
I hope there are no associates in the audience here. You
just saying.
You just broke their hearts.
Just saying. 2, whenever possible, try to get an intro into that person because it was a warm connection as opposed to just a cold email. VCs just get so much inbound and they have to look through so much noise that if you're able to provide some layer of trust on top of that intro, it's just so valuable.
It's great advice. I would add a corollary, get one of their CEOs or portfolio companies to make the intro.
Even better. And then 3, this is my point of view, not everybody believes in this, is don't hang out with VCs. Don't
you're hurting my feeling now.
What I mean by that is not as friends, but I'm saying don't get to know VCs because we're getting to know each other. They're getting to know my company, I'm sharing my updates. When you want to raise, go raise, and it's binary, yes, no. VCs will use any information, any inputs, any contact points as data gathering. They said they were going to do this by next quarter, then they check with you next quarter, you either did it or you didn't do it, so that's part of their analysis, right? And you say you were going to do 10, you did 5, you say you were going to do 10, you did 12, then 12 wasn't enough, I want to see you do 20, but then you only did 15 the next quarter, you did 22 the next quarter. They track all this. It might seem all casual, let's just grab a coffee, just want to see how things are going. Were you able to hire that COO? No, you weren't. Oh, didn't hire the COO. But it's they didn't pull out the notebook, right? But it's
why am I sitting here?
And at the end of the day, there's these 2 feelings that drive VCs or any investor. It's really greed or fear, right? So you either feel that this investment is so quality that I'm so greedy, I need to pile my money in as quickly as possible and as much as possible, otherwise I'm going to miss out, right? Or fear that there's too much risk, it doesn't look like to me good, if I put my money in, I'm going to look like an idiot in front of my other VCs or my peers or whatever. So you really need to, the more you can compress that time and create that pressure so that it becomes a little bit of a leveling where the entrepreneur is not just like the sucker who's like, oh, VC, please give me money. Like, I will do anything at whatever time. You can try to change that dynamic. And I believe the way to best do that is to try to limit it to here are the 4 weeks when this is happening, which is hard, or the 6 weeks, or the 8 weeks, or the 10 weeks, or the 12 weeks. But to have some sort of like a plan as to this is how it's going to go down. And if it doesn't go down like that, change course. Like, don't just keep on getting to know them. You probably have a different perspective on that, but I feel like that's important. I've coached quite a few entrepreneurs on that, and in general, it works.
What do you guys think? Those of you agree, raise your hand. See? Those of you don't, raise your hand. Wow, the audience agrees with you.
I mean, it's not obviously true, like as in accurate. A VC will obviously tell you, like, go get to know them because then they know who you are or whatever, but it's in their best interest to say that.
No, I mean, I think the nuance is that, when we're early stage, when we jump in Series A, when we help the portfolio company raise Series B, C, I mean, I just came out of a fundraise for a company called Zola, who raised $100 million. And if I reflect on the process, so much of fundraising, I think you guys probably intrinsically know this already, is actually running an auction process. You want to run the process tight. You want to have tension in the process. And you want to keep everyone honest.
Right, and auctions have time limitations.
That's right. Right? And so that limitation of 4 weeks is, I think 4 or 5 weeks, depending on how much capital you're raising for 10 or 15, you can run.
You can make whatever timeline you want, just as long as you stick to the timeline.
It's actually really, it's really great advice that you've just said there. Let's move on to something different. So, this thing has got started. Marketplace, I don't know if those of you care about marketplace or not, but at least for me, I think
we both like marketplaces.
I love marketplaces. That's sort of what I've done in the last 5-6 years now.
It's kind of like, have you seen Ferris Bueller's Day Off? So in Ferris Bueller's Day Off, he like takes that Ferrari or whatever, like that red car, and he starts driving around. And then he stops driving and looks in the bathroom or whatever, and he looks at the camera. He's like, if you have the means, I highly recommend you get one. Right? See, the best business model there is practically is marketplace. Right? It's one of the few business models that over time, not only margins don't compress, they actually can increase. Right? The more you create network effect, the greater your business becomes. So it's very difficult to create a marketplace, supply, demand, equilibrium, be able to get chicken and egg problems, all that. But if you have the means, I highly recommend you make one.
So talk about, most of the marketplace we've seen goes like this, flatline for a long time, and then it starts to pop. What was the point, the non-obvious thing for Indigogo that finally got it, sort of the flywheel going? Well, maybe you had the flywheel from the very
Well, we definitely didn't have the flywheel from the very beginning. It took definitely like a year and a half to get any sort of momentum at all. We did 3 conscious things that I believe was the catalyst. Maybe it would have happened anyway. But we did 3 conscious things. Number 1, we were a film-only fundraising site. That's not because we planned on being a film fundraising site. It's because we wanted to specialize in one vertical first, the way Amazon did with books, to improve the product before we expanded onto everything. So on that day, we expanded onto everything. And then number 2 is instead of being only looking for inbound sales, we actually started to say, let's see if we can bring customers to us.
Yeah.
And then number 3 was a change in the actual user experience. We thought we were so strategic. I was a strategy consultant before this, so I had like 6 different buttons. Like still today, people are like, what would be good on an Indiegogo page? Like sometimes those projects, they're looking for employees. You should have like apply here or look for whatever. Or you know what, I'd like to rate those projects. People say that to me today. You wanna know something crazy? Day 1 of Indiegogo, 2008, January, we had all those features. All of them.
Funny, isn't it?
You can rate, you can apply for a job, you can say you want to work there, you can say you need these people, all that. We had all of this. So we did 3 things. We, 1, removed every single button, except for fund, every single button. Which I know that sounds easy right now, but that was very hard to do. we worked so hard on creating this, like, you know, user flow and all these different experiences you can have. We moved every single button. Number 2, we actually started selling, so we would actively try to find customers.
Got it.
And number 3, we expanded to everything. And then it was just like up and to the right. The funny thing is about the expanding to everything is I would go to VCs and I would say, oh, we're a fundraising platform where people can raise money through the crowd. They're like, yeah, we don't fund films. I'm like, yeah, no, it's not a film. They're like, no, LA is where they fund films. I'm like, I get it, I'm an internet company. They're like, no, this is film fundraising, we don't fund films. I'm like, okay, what if it like said hardware? They're like, that's cool. But it doesn't, it says film, so you're a film site. I'm like, you do understand how technology works, right? It's like the field that you can pick right now is only film, and it could be a drop down where it could be other categories. These are smart VCs, like these are smart human beings, right? They're like, listen, LA, I know some VCs in LA. I think you should go for film stuff, it could be cool. Okay, just imagine for a second that there are like 20 categories, and when you create a campaign, they pick the category, and this could be like different categories. They're like, that's cool. So it wasn't until we did it, and then the next day when we did it, it's like, this is amazing, I haven't seen anything like this is so innovative. Like, we just talked about this yesterday. The reason that's interesting is because a lot of VCs and a lot of humans, right, is they can't actually envision something that's not true. The reason it's not true is because it can't be true until it is true. So it's very hard for them to believe in something, which is why numbers and data are so much easier to pile in money on, as opposed to just your opinions and your thoughts.
Was there a customer selection you went after? Like the people who funded the projects, was there a particular cluster that popped up? It was a pretty.
We were supply side at first, and we would work with the supply side to capture their demand because they came with their own demand.
Yep.
And what we did was we brought their demand into the network, and then one person's company's demand became the other portfolio company's demand in the future. So we didn't actually go after demand in the early days. The demand came from the supply. And then the beauty of the model is we don't pay to get the demand because the supply brings the demand.
Yep.
And then before you know it, you have 20 million backers that you didn't pay to bring because you got it through the supply.
Yep.
And then those 20 million backers can back anybody.
Yep. Talk about.
Which is exactly how Indigogo grew.
I think in the speaker room you were talking about, you guys have about 140 people-ish.
Yeah.
And talk about the early days, for those companies, you got to build up, build a team, build the execs. Talk about that journey a little bit. Sort of what were the first critical hires for you as you think about scaling? What are, we have a few minutes here.
Yeah,
talk a little bit about the people aspect, the culture people aspect.
Well, culture is the most important thing. Determining your values, figuring out how you're going to hire, filtering for values, and then allowing anybody that gets through the gate of those values in the interviews to then influence the culture. I think that a lot of people make a mistake that they say that, oh, we here at XYZ company, we have this culture. So you employee can come and be a part of that culture or you cannot. You either fit our culture or you do not, which in my opinion is completely the wrong way of thinking about it, which is you have values. Companies have values, and if an employee can get through the values and the interview screen, right, they then influence the culture. See, culture is this amorphous thing, it's like clay in the middle of the room, and whoever is an employee at the company influences the culture. And if you do not allow them to, they're not going to stay at the company for very long.
When did you guys start actively having a conversation about culture?
So we, for all intents and purposes, were like 6 people for the first few years. And then we raised our seed round, $275,000. Well, it wasn't even seed, it was a convertible note. $275,000 in 2010. We were still 6 people, and then we raised, that's when we finally got, a few months later, our seed, which is a 1.5. So we went from 6 people to about 18 people. Things were going really well then. And then we raised another $15 million 14 months later. And then we jumped quickly to about 40 people. And then a year and a half later, we raised another $52 million. So it all went pretty fast. Then we went from like 45 people to like 75 people overnight. And then before you knew it, we were like 120, and then steady state for the last few years. But I would say that when we went from 6 to 18, it wasn't that hard because it kind of felt like we were all involved, we were all having discussions, and we were debating and arguing a little bit. But then things had to get a little bit more scalable and a little bit more systematic. So we were going from like 18 to 40, and it just didn't feel like it was productive. Like somebody who talked a lot would like get their way about a hire versus another person who was quiet, you know, in these discussions. So then we created just like these systems, which was, you know, here's our vision of what we're trying to accomplish, here's the values underneath that, and then here's our hiring approach, which is you have to have what's the title, what's the job description, who's the sponsor of this hire, and who will they report to, who's the hiring team, who are the 3 to 5 people that are going to make this decision, and what are the roles of each of the 3 to 5 people. As soon as that became systematized, it became very easy because then we included the values into the interview process, and then each of the people in the hiring process knew their role, whether it was for culture, whether it was for function, whether it was for something else. So then later the discussions always became kind of like systematic, and you can no longer say, I think this. You started talking in values or in kind of the way the interviews were done.
Cool. How would you describe Indigogo culture today?
How would I describe it? I mean, the simple answer is multiple VCs. I remember when we were going through the fundraising process, they would wait in the waiting room sort of thing, or at the front desk area before the meeting started, and they would just kind of browse and see what was going on. And they would be like, oh, I don't actually need to meet with you anymore because I've already seen what I need to see, which is like, this company's awesome.
Why is that?
Yeah, why is that? People are really nice, almost too nice, definitely very smart, definitely trying to change the world. If you have, you know, Mother Teresa on one side and assassins on the other side, you know, hired assassins, you know, we're definitely somewhere in the middle. Because you know what I'm talking about, right? There are certain companies that there's just people that are looking to make money, right? So they just jump from company to company. And there are others which is just like feel good and they just want to like be on some social impact thing but accomplish nothing, right? And it's very hard to find a place in between there, which is not cutthroat, not super competitive. Now, cutthroat and competitive and everything can drive high valuations. It's just not going to have a positive culture if for some reason your valuation goes down or your options are underwater, which there's been plenty of company in Silicon Valley that has gone through that, right? As soon as that happens, like everybody jumps ship. Because, you know, those assassins there, they're greedy. They just go for the money and they're along for the pain just to make money, which is, that's just how it is at some of these companies. At Indigogo, we're very team-oriented. We really believe in our values, faith, fearlessness, authenticity, collaboration, and empowerment. We live it every day. We hire for it. We're very customer-focused. Yeah.
That's awesome. You guys are 10 years in journey. You guys are building a successful platform. Any thoughts on the next 5 years?
I mean, the next 5 years will be exciting. Indigogo is constantly evolving. We've created this, one day at a time, we've created a community. And
How big is the community?
What's that?
How big is the community?
Well over 10 million. And what you can do with that community is where the exciting thing happens, right? Because at first you're trying to get one entrepreneur to get one piece of funding. But once you have one of the largest networks of entrepreneurs in the world, and you have these network of backers who want to fund these things, you can start doing very interesting things. So we've gone from a regular perks business to having an enterprise business with the largest Fortune 500 companies in the world, to having an equity business now where, you know, we're slowly becoming an established VC with all of our investments that are happening through the crowd. We've now moved into blockchain and doing ICOs. And if it sounds like there's a lot of things going on, it's because there are. But these are things that you can stack on top of creating the network. Did I know that all of this would be created? Absolutely not. Was this the original plan? Not in itself. But as a foundation, it was. It was to create this marketplace where any entrepreneur can put up an idea and any backer can back, buy, or invest however they want. And then the creativity that happens on top of that, you just allow it to happen. Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, Gaza, you guys had a chance to meet Slava. Really awesome stories. Thanks for all the digs on the VCs here. You know, with that, let's give a round of applause to Slava here.
Some of you might ask for a card. I don't have cards. My email is slava@Indigogo. I answer my emails. I promise you I don't have cards. You don't have to give me your card. You don't have to ask for a card. If you want to email me, it's just my first name, slava@Indigogo.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Thank you both. All right, guys, you made it through an entire day. For context, that is actually 18 sessions back to back, so congratulations, that is a feat. So now we're gonna have some drinks. We do actually have, since we had so many talks on Silicon Valley, we're going to have a comedy show at 6 p.m. to laugh about that Silicon Valley that we love so much. So thank you all for joining us again, and if you guys have any questions about Silicon Valley in general, if you have questions about Founders Embassy, please feel free to find me and let's have a drink. Thank you all.